The anchorage held a silence older than stars. Commander Eva Rostova watched the geometric void on the main screen, a shape so black it felt like a wound in the fabric of space. Her ship, the Concordiat survey vessel Stellograph, drifted at the legal edge of the Kepler 186 quarantine perimeter. 500 years of interdiction had kept this system pristine, a ghost story whispered by navigators. Now the story was ending. The Gilded Hand. A splinter fleet of zealots and legalists was less than an hour out, and their intentions were anything but preservation. The stakes were simple, the single most powerful relic of old humanity, and the soul of interstellar law itself. Rostova's fingers rested on the cool metal of her command chair. The air in the bridge had the cold, clean bite of high-efficiency recyclers, a sterile scent for a moment thick with history. Tucked into the relic's unseeable superstructure were sleeping sensor arrays dormant for untold centuries. She could almost feel their gaze, a pressure against the Stellograph's hull. Her executive officer, Eris Thorne, stood beside her, his posture a rigid line of military certainty. He saw a weapon waiting for a hand. Eva saw a question that had waited 500 years for an answer. "They are broadcasting their claim on all channels," Eris said, his voice a low grumble. Citing Precedent 34. Article 12, Rights of Salvage for Ideological Progenitors. They believe their philosophy makes them its direct heirs. "Their philosophy is a corruption," Eva replied, her gaze unwavering from the screen. They twist the first adjudicator's words into a mandate for conquest. The ship's integrated AI, its consciousness woven into the very fiber of the vessel, spoke with a calm, chime-like quality. Probability of their claim being recognized by any lawful body is less than 0.1%, Commander. However, their probability of attempting to seize the anchorage by force is 98.7%. Its law was not a shield, it was a sword, which is why we are here, Magister Eva murmured. She was a diplomat by training, a historian by passion. She was not a soldier. Yet here she was, commanding the only Concordiat ship in 10 parsecs, facing a fleet that saw law as a key to unlock the ultimate weapon. The Obsidian anchorage was not merely a warship. The old texts called it a saint ship, an archive of law and judgment, from a time when humanity's reach was first stretching to the stars. It was built to teach, not to conquer. A soft hum resonated through the Stellograph's deck plates, a faint vibration that had started the moment they'd entered the system. It was the relic dreaming in its long sleep. The hum was a phantom limb, a memory of power that made the back of Eva's teeth ache. On a secondary screen, the sigil of the anchorage was displayed, a simple, elegant symbol of a balanced scale held within a circle. It was a mark of temperance, of careful measure. The Gilded Hand had warped that symbol, adding a gaudy gilded sword piercing the balance point. They had missed the entire point. The anchorage did not break ties. It was the tie itself, the anchor that held the law steady in the chaotic tides of space. Eva had to reach it first. She had to prove herself worthy not of its power, but of its purpose. The old ways had teeth. Eris shifted his weight. "Commander, our long-range scans confirm their fleet composition. 3 converted Apostle-class cruisers and a dozen Scythe-class pickets. They outgun us significantly." His tone was pragmatic, a stark contrast to the reverence in Eva's. "Our orders are to observe and report. Engaging them would be unwise. Our orders are to uphold the quarantine and prevent unauthorized contact with the artifact." Eva countered gently, never taking her eyes off the void. "Prelate Kalen and his Gilded Hand constitute unauthorized contact. We will not engage them. We will speak to the anchorage." "Speak to it." Aris scoffed, then caught himself. "Apologies, Commander, but it's a ship, a dormant one. It is more than a ship, Aris. It is a repository, a judge. Magister, open a dedicated channel. Use the old Terran standard prime number encoding. Send a simple query, a request for dialogue. The AI's voice was serene. Channel open. Query sent. The anchorage remains silent, Commander. Its energy signature is negligible, consistent with a dormant state for the last 5 millennia. Eva nodded slowly. It is waiting. It is testing. Not for a password, but for intent. She could feel it, a deep certainty that settled in her bones. The hum was its sleeping breath. The silence was its question. A memory of justice is a dangerous thing. On the freighter Stardust, drifter hauling refined helium-3 from Proxima to the outer colonies, Captain Jax listened to the broadcast. The Concordiate alert was sterile, warning all traffic to avoid the Kepler 186 sector. But the Gilded Hand's message, that was the one that made the hairs on his arms stand up. It was full of fire and faith. A golden age returning, a human birthright reclaimed. He looked at his co-pilot, a young woman barely out of her teens, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and awe. "Don't listen to that garbage," Jax grumbled, turning the channel. "That kind of talk gets people killed. Old ships should stay dead." "They've crossed the perimeter," Sensor Chief Lena Petrova announced, her voice tight. On the tactical display, a cluster of red icons slid past the dotted quarantine line. "They are accelerating. Time to intercept with the anchorage is 17 minutes. They are arrogant," Aris noted, his hand instinctively going to the sidearm at his hip. "They expect us to stand aside." "We will," Ava said, startling both of them. "We will hold our position." Magister continue broadcasting the query. "But this time append my personal identikey and my family lineage. Reference my ancestors' role in the first Concordiate Accords." The AI processed the command instantly. "A curious strategy. Commander, appealing to familial history is not a recognized protocol for first contact with a dormant AI." "This isn't a standard AI," Eva replied. "The anchorage remembers. The old stories say it remembers everything, every law written, every judgment passed. It operates on precedent. I am giving it one. The past is a lens, not a map." The minutes ticked by. The Gilded Hand fleet grew larger on the screen, their gaudy golden prows like daggers aimed at the heart of the system. Their comms channel crackled to life, a booming, sanctimonious voice filling the Stellagraph's bridge. "Concordiate vessel, you are in violation of our sacred claim. This is a matter of faith and heritage. Stand down or be unregistered." Eva ignored him. Her focus was entirely on the silent black shape. The hum was growing stronger, a resonant frequency that vibrated through the ship. It was no longer just a feeling. It was a sound, a low bass note at the very edge of human hearing. "It's listening," she whispered, and then it answered. Not with words, but with light. A single needle-thin beam of pale blue light erupted from the anchorage's forward section, striking the Stellagraph. It was not a weapon. It was a connection. Alarms blared for a fraction of a second before Petrova silenced them. "No damage. It's a carrier wave. A data link." Magister's voice filled the sudden silence, tinged with something that might have been surprise. "Commander, I am receiving a transmission. It is archaic. A query protocol I have not encountered before. It is not asking for codes. It is asking a question." On screen, Eva commanded, her heart pounding. Text scrolled into view, written in a stark, simple font that was somehow more intimidating than any threat. "What is the cost of a life?" Eris stared at the screen, bewildered. "What the hell is that A riddle?" "Prelate." Kalen's voice boomed again, angrier this time. "Concordiate vessel, you are interfering with a holy relic. Cease your transmissions, or we will open fire." The deepest truths are spoken in silence. Eva ignored the threat. She looked at the question on the screen, feeling the weight of millennia behind it. This was the key. This was the test. A simple question with an infinitely complex answer. Magister, she said, her voice steady. Record my answer and transmit it. She leaned forward, her eyes locked on the ancient words. The cost of a life is all the choices that life will never make. It is the ripples that will never spread. It is the absence that will be left in the universe. She paused, thinking of the Gilded Hand's zealotry. Its cost is measured not by the one who dies, but by those who live on. To take a life is to incur a debt that can never be repaid, only honored. The transmission was sent. For a moment there was only the thrum of the Stellagraph's engines and the insistent ping of the Gilded Hand's targeting locks. Then the anchorage responded. The blue light intensified and new text appeared. What is the weight of a choice? This time Eris understood. It's a dialogue, a test of character. Precisely, Eva said. They believe the key is a piece of data. The key is a state of mind. She considered the second question. The Gilded Hand believed their choices were preordained, a righteous path to glory. They felt no weight. Transmit! She began again. The weight of a choice is the sum of its consequences borne by the one who makes it. A light choice is one that affects only the self. A heavy choice is one that affects others. The heaviest choices are those that affect the future, for they are weighed against ghosts yet to come. The Gilded Hand fleet was now in weapons range. One of the Apostle cruisers fired a warning shot, a lance of brilliant plasma that streaked past the Stellagraph's port side, close enough to make the ship shudder. They are posturing, Aris said, though his knuckles were white. They don't want to damage the anchorage, and the anchor remembers every storm. They won't have to, Ava said softly. A third question had appeared, the light from the anchorage, now a steady, brilliant blue that illuminated the bridge. What is the shape of justice? This was the final test. The Gilded Hand saw justice as a sword, a tool to carve the galaxy into their desired shape. Prelate Kalen preached a gospel of righteous conquest, of a justice that burned away the impure. Eva knew that was the path to tyranny. She looked at the sigil of the anchorage, the balanced scales. Transmit my final answer, she instructed Magister. Justice is not a shape. It is a space. It is the space created between a wrong and a right, a space where truth can be heard. It is not a weapon to be wielded, but a foundation on which to build. Its only true shape is the open hand, not the closed fist. For a long, terrifying moment, nothing happened. The Gilded Hand ships began to advance, their weapon ports glowing with malevolent energy. Prelate Kalen's voice returned, dripping with contempt. Your silence condemns you, Concordiat. You are unworthy. You hide behind riddles while we embrace destiny. Then the universe seemed to hold its breath. The low hum from the anchorage ceased. The blue light vanished. A profound, absolute silence descended. Aris swore under his breath. It rejected us. But Eva smiled, a small, tired smile. No, she said. It has made its judgment. A sleeping giant knows its own name. A new light appeared on the obsidian anchorage. Not a beam, but a soft internal luminescence. Panels and conduits that had been dormant for eons began to glow with a gentle white light, tracing patterns across the impossibly black hull. It looked like a constellation being born. The sigil on its forward section, the scales in the circle, flared with brilliant intensity. Magister's voice was flat, but the data scrolling on Petrova's console was anything but. Commander, the relic is undergoing a full system activation. Power levels are rising exponentially. I am detecting life support, gravity, an active bridge. On the main screen, a section of the anchorage's hull slid away with silent, impossible precision, revealing an open docking bay bathed in soft, welcoming light. A navigational beacon activated, painting a path from the Stellagraph to the relic. It was an invitation, Prelate. Kalen's scream of fury was almost comical. No, it is ours by right. By faith, fire on the Concordiate vessel. Disable them, but it was too late. Before the gilded hand could fire a wave of energy, gentle but absolute, washed over them. It wasn't an attack. Petrova's hands flew over her console. What was that targeted EMP? No, it's something else. Their weapon systems are offline. Not damaged, just non-responsive. Their engines are failing too. The entire Gilded Hand fleet was dead in the water, their lights flickering as they drifted helplessly. The anchorage had not fired a single shot. It had simply denied them. It had rendered their technology inert, their aggression moot. It teaches by numbers and remembers by ledgers. It judged them. Aris breathed, his military mind struggling to comprehend a weapon that did not destroy. It didn't judge them, Iva corrected. It judged their intent. It found it wanting. She stood up, her posture straight and certain. Aris, you have the bridge. Lena, monitor the Gilded Hand. Let me know if they regain any system control. I am taking a shuttle to the anchorage. Commander, that's unwise, Aris protested. We don't know what's in there. We know exactly what's in there, Eva said. Her voice filled with a reverence that silenced all argument. The law. The shuttle ride was short and silent. As they approached the relic, its sheer scale became overwhelming. It was not built. It was sculpted. The hull was a seamless expanse of material that drank the light unmarked by even micrometeorites. It was an object that had willed itself to endure. Docking was automated and flawless. The moment the ramp lowered, the air that greeted them was cool, clean, and ancient. It smelled of sterile metal and ozone, the scent of sleeping power. Eva stepped out, flanked by 2 security officers in light armor. They were not in a docking bay. They were in a vast, cathedral-like hall. The walls were lined with alcoves, each containing a softly glowing orb of light. The ceiling was a dome that showed a perfect real-time star map of the galaxy. In the center of the hall, a single figure stood waiting. It was a construct humanoid in shape, but forged from the same star-dark metal as the ship, its face a smooth, featureless plate. When the court sits, all else is silent. I am the proctor, the construct said. Its voice was not mechanical, but a perfectly modulated baritone resonating from its very core. I am the voice of the anchorage. You are the petitioner Eva Rostova of the line of Marin. Your answers were acceptable. I am honored, Eva said, inclining her head. There was no sense of talking to a machine. This being had a presence, an aura of immense age and authority. Honor is a consequence, not a goal, the proctor stated. The anchorage is active. Its primary function must be restored. A judgment is required. A precedent must be set. The fleet that accompanied you, the Gilded Hand, has made a claim. They have attempted to subvert the process. They have demonstrated hostile intent. The ledgers must be balanced. Eva felt a chill. What do you mean by balanced? Their actions have created a debt, the proctor explained, its featureless face somehow conveying an unyielding gravity. They used a corrupted interpretation of the law to justify violence. The anchorage was built to counter such fallacies. It teaches. Sometimes the lessons are harsh. The proctor turned and began to walk, its movements silent and fluid. Follow. The bridge awaits. You have been granted provisional stewardship. The weight of a crown is measured in responsibility. They followed the proctor through corridors that were both vast and starkly beautiful. There were no decorations, only clean lines, soft indirect lighting, and the ever-present hum of immense controlled power. The ship was not just a machine. It was an idea given physical form. The idea of perfect, unyielding, incorruptible law. The bridge was not a cockpit. It was a circular chamber more akin to a courtroom or a lecture hall. A raised dais in the center, held a single command throne empty. The walls were a living display showing every metric of the system, every ship, every particle of dust with impossible clarity. Ava could see the Gilded Hand fleet adrift and powerless. She could see their life support readings, their crew statuses, their panicked and useless commands. "The Gilded Hand fleet has been pacified," the proctor said, gesturing to the display. "Their weapon and propulsion systems are held in a null energy field. They cannot act. They can only listen." "And what will you say to them?" Eva asked, approaching the central dais. "The anchorage will not speak. It will demonstrate," the proctor replied. It gestured to the command throne. "The choice of demonstration falls to you, steward." Eva looked at the throne. It was not ornate, but carved from a single piece of obsidian-like material, the balanced scale sigil etched into its high back. Sitting in it felt presumptuous. But the proctor was waiting. The anchorage was waiting. She was the one who had answered the riddles. She was the one who understood. With a deep breath, she sat down. A ruling once made echoes forever. The moment she made contact with the chair, information flooded her mind. Not as data, but as understanding. She felt the ship, its immense power, its ancient purpose. She felt the Dyson Ring ruins that orbited the system's star, the pulsar yard that lay dormant, the network of sensors that permeated the entire sector. She understood what the anchorage was. It was not a warship. It was an instrument of cosmic jurisprudence. Its weapons did not fire plasma or projectiles. They fired consequences. Their claim is based on Precedent 34. Eva said aloud, the knowledge flowing through her. But they ignore the addendums Tisson. Addendum 34C. No claim of heritage can be used to justify an act of aggression against a neutral party. She looked at the proctor. "They fired on my ship." "A verifiable fact," the proctor confirmed. "The ledgers have recorded it. Their ideology is based on the first adjudicator's writings." Eva continued, feeling more confident as the ship's logic intertwined with her own. "But they selectively quote. They ignore the adjudicator's core tenet: law is a conversation, not a decree." "Also a verifiable fact," the proctor intoned. "Their entire foundation is a willful misinterpretation, a falsehood." On the display, Prelate Kalen's flagship was trying to reboot its systems, sending frantic, useless commands. Eva could feel their frustration, their rage. They had come for a sword and had been handed a mirror. "A mirror shows only what is there. They believe themselves to be righteous," Eva murmured. "To simply punish them would reinforce their martyrdom. They need to be taught." "You said it yourself, Proctor. The anchorage teaches. Your reasoning is sound, steward. What is your ruling?" Eva looked at the tools the anchorage provided. There were no buttons for weapons. There were concepts. Redaction, sanction, reconfiguration, and one that stood out, reciprocity, the law of the mirror. Turning an act back upon its perpetrator not as vengeance but as a lesson. She thought about the system they were in. The Kepler 186 star was old and stable. The ruins of a Dyson ring, a project abandoned untold ages ago, still orbited it, a glittering belt of debris and dormant structures. It was a massive, complex energy environment, a perfect classroom. "Prelate, Kalen used the law as a key to open a door to power," Eva said, formulating her plan. "He was prepared to use force to take what he wanted. He broadcast his intentions for all to hear." She pointed to the Gilded Hand fleet. "The anchorage will give him exactly what he asked for." Reciprocity. "Magister," she said, her voice now carrying a new authority so that patched through to her own ship. "Are you recording this?" "With pleasure." Commander, the AI's voice replied in her ear, a ghost from her old life. Proctor Eva commanded isolate the Gilded Hand's primary energy conduits. Their weapons, their shields, their engines. They brought all this potential energy into a place of peace. They intended to expend it in violence. We will redirect it. The greatest force is a change in perspective. The Proctor remained motionless, but Eva could feel the ship's systems respond to her command. On the tactical display, intricate energy webs were drawn around the disabled ships. The Dyson Ring ruins, Eva said, her eyes alight with an idea. They are dormant, but their collectors are still functional. The prelate brought a great deal of energy into this system. Let's put it to good use. She focused her intent through the throne. She wasn't flipping switches. She was signing a judgment. The anchorage responded. From the relic's hull, 1,000 tiny projectors emerged, creating a network of energy lenses around the Gilded Hand fleet. They began to draw power from the ships, not enough to endanger the crews, but enough to drain their reactors, their batteries, their capacitors. Every joule of energy they had brought for war was being carefully siphoned away. The stolen energy was focused, shaped into a coherent beam, and shot across the system. It was a river of pure power arcing gracefully toward the shattered Dyson Ring. The beam struck one of the dormant collectors. The ancient structure, dark for millennia, flared to life. The light spread from one section to another, a chain reaction of awakening. Within minutes, a significant portion of the Dyson Ring was glowing its systems, rebooting its purpose, re-emerging from the dust of ages. What? What are you doing? Eris's voice came over the comm, filled with disbelief. The prelate came to claim a relic of the past. Eva's voice broadcast back, not just to her ship, but on an open channel for all to hear, including the Gilded Hand. So we are using his resources to restore another one. He wanted to be a conqueror. Instead, he will be a builder. His fleet's energy is rebooting the Kepler 186 restoration project. On the bridge of his crippled flagship, Prelate Kalen could only watch in impotent fury as the very power he meant to use for conquest was being turned into a creative, generative act. His ships were being used as a cosmic battery to restart a wonder of the ancient world. A debt paid is a lesson learned. The anchorage had not destroyed them. It had humiliated them. It had taken their sword and beaten it into a plowshare right in front of their eyes. It was a demonstration of power so absolute, so elegant. It was far more devastating than any explosion. The energy transfer is complete, the Proctor announced. The Gilded Hand fleet is running on minimal life support. They are no longer a threat. Their lesson is not over, Eva said. She stood from the throne, feeling the immense connection to the ship recede, leaving her feeling both lighter and smaller. The anchorage remembers by ledgers. Let's make an entry. She turned to the Proctor. Send them a message, a bill, for the energy they donated, for the Concordiate's time in mediating this dispute, for violating a quarantine zone. Itemize it. Bill them to the last credit. This was the final piece of the judgment. Not just to defeat them, but to subject them to the mundane bureaucratic consequences of their actions. To bury their grand crusade under a mountain of legal paperwork. It was a fate worse than destruction for fanatics like Kalen. It was the ultimate indignity. It was justice in the shape of a ledger. The law is patient. It can wait. Aboard the independent trader Crimson Nomad, the ship's grizzled captain watched the public record of the Kepler 186 incident. He saw the Gilded Hand's fleet dark and adrift. He saw the stunning, impossible image of a section of the Dyson Ring blazing with new light. And he saw the official Concordiate bill issued to the Zealots, a document of such meticulous and crushing legal force that it was a work of art. He let out a low whistle. Well, I'll be, he muttered to his first mate. The old myths are true. Never bring a sword to an argument of numbers. Eva returned to the stellograph as the first Concordiate support fleet was arriving. She left the anchorage in the care of the Proctor, its systems humming with renewed purpose, its vigil restored. The Gilded Hand fleet was taken into custody without a fight, their fanatical certainty shattered by the quiet, overwhelming logic of the relic. They had been outmaneuvered, not outgunned. Eris met her in the docking bay, his expression a mixture of awe and profound respect. "Commander." "What was that? What is that ship?" "It is a teacher," Ava said, weariness finally settling into her bones. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by the immense weight of what she had done. She had not just won a battle. She had set a precedent that would echo through the Concordiat for centuries. The stewardship of the anchorage was now hers, a responsibility she had never sought, but now could not refuse. "It teaches by example," she continued, "and it just gave a master class in the law of reciprocity." She looked back at the view screen where the obsidian anchorage hung in the void, silent and patient once more. A section of the Dyson ring now gleamed like a newfound star. It was a monument not to a victory in battle, but to a victory of principle. Her work was just beginning. The anchorage was awake, and the galaxy was full of those who would seek to misuse its power or twist its laws. She would be its guardian. She would be its voice. The account is open. The page is waiting. Days later, Eva stood on the bridge of the anchorage once more. She had made the Saint ship her official command post. A decision that sent ripples of shock and debate through the whole of the Concordiat. Many were terrified, seeing it as a dangerous consolidation of power. Others were hopeful, viewing it as the dawn of a new era of clarity and justice. Eva ignored the noise. Her focus was on the task at hand. The proctor stood beside her, a silent, implacable presence. "The Gilded Hand's records have been fully analyzed," the proctor stated. "Their network is extensive. They have sympathizers and hidden cells in 12 different sectors. Their philosophy of righteous conquest has taken root in many systems neglected by the Concordiat." Eva looked at the star map that covered the dome above them. It was no longer just a map. It was a ledger. Each star system was an entry, each colony a sub-account. "They are not the only ones," she said. Pirate clans in the Perseus Arm, illegal corporate mining in the Hadar sector, the slaver rings of the Onyx Expanse. The law has been absent for too long in too many places. The anchorage was built to address such imbalances, the proctor said. Its range is considerable. Its methods are effective. A sickness of the soul requires a surgeon's hand. Eva knew what the proctor was implying. The anchorage had the power to pacify fleets, to rewrite economies, to enforce the law on a scale that was previously unimaginable. It was a terrifying amount of power to be vested in one person. The throne behind her seemed to hum with that potential, a siren song of absolute order. Power is not the goal, she reminded herself and the proctor. Justice is. We will not be conquerors. We will be auditors. We will go to these places not with threats but with the truth. A message alert chimed. It was from Eris, now acting captain of the Stellograph, which remained as an escort. "Commander, we have an incoming Priority 1 dispatch from Concordiat High Command. They are concerned. They are demanding you relinquish control of the anchorage and return to Sector Command for a full debriefing. They cite regulations on autonomous artifact command." Eva looked at the proctor. They are afraid. They see a weapon just like the Gilded Hand did. They don't understand. "Fear is a predictable response to the unknown," the proctor replied. "The Concordiat's regulations do not have a classification for this vessel. We are a legal paradox." "Then we will have to provide them with a new classification," Eva decided. Her jaw was set. This was the next test, not against an enemy fleet, but against the very institution she served. The bureaucracy, the fear, the politics. They demand I return. They believe I am a rogue element. The first step to healing is diagnosis. Proctor, open a system-wide channel. Broadcast to the entire Concordiat. I am going to answer High Command publicly. They want a debriefing. I will give it to them. The channel opened. Eva could feel the attention of thousands of ships, millions of people, turning toward this single point in space. She took her seat on the throne, feeling the familiar connection, the vast, cold logic of the anchorage flowing into her. Her voice when she spoke was calm and carried an authority that was not entirely her own. "This is Commander Eva Rostova, acting steward of the Obsidian Anchorage. High Command has requested my return. They are right to be concerned. The power of this vessel is immense, and it must be governed by law. My law, your law, the foundation upon which the Concordiate was built." She paused, letting the words sink in across the sectors. "But the anchorage is not a weapon to be locked in a vault, nor a crown to be worn by an emperor. It is an instrument of the law, and the law must be seen to be done. It is a ledger, and its accounts must be made public. Therefore, I will not be returning. The anchorage will be." Her words created a wave of confusion. Iris's voice was a tight whisper in her ear. "Commander, what are you planning?" "The anchorage taught me about reciprocity," she broadcast. "High Command fears a rogue agent with a superweapon, so I will give them the opposite. Proctor plot a course to the Concordiate capital to Cygnus X1. But we will not travel by conventional means." She leaned into the throne's interface, accessing systems that felt both alien and intuitive. The ship was more than a vessel. It was a manipulator of space-time itself, its navigation based on principles that made FTL drives look like stone axes. "We are going to make a statement," Iva said. "We are not a threat. We are a promise. A promise kept is the strongest bond." The stars on the dome display began to shift. The anchorage was not accelerating. The space around it was folding. The ship remained perfectly still as the universe was pulled toward it. It was a breathtaking, terrifying, and beautiful sight. They were not flying to the capital. They were bringing the capital to them. "High Command fears that I have taken the anchorage." Eva's voice boomed across the network. "I have not. I have accepted its stewardship, and its first official act under my guidance will be to submit itself to the authority of the Concordiate. Not to a military committee, but to the full assembly. We are coming to you not as conquerors, but as petitioners, to establish a new precedent, a new branch of law. The office of the steward, an independent, transparent body tasked with wielding this vessel's power to audit the darkest corners of the galaxy and balance the ledgers of civilization." She was taking an incredible gamble. She was presenting the Concordiate with a choice: embrace this new power within a framework of law and transparency, or reject it and prove that their own laws were hollow. The journey took minutes. The Obsidian Anchorage appeared in high orbit over the pristine Ecumenopolis capital world of the Concordiate, a black knife edge in a sky full of traffic and orbital rings. It caused panic, awe, and chaos. But it did not power its weapons. It simply sat a silent question in the heart of the government. It held a silence older than their laws, and it was waiting for an answer. The judge does not enter the court. The judge is the court. The arrival of the Obsidian Anchorage was not an act of war. It was an act of punctuation. A period placed at the end of a long, rambling sentence of galactic politics. Down on the surface of Cygnus X1, 1,000,000,000,000 souls felt the shift. It began as a flicker in the sky, a patch of stars that suddenly wasn't there. Then came the tidal wave of information as Eva Rostova's broadcast cascaded through every public and private network. In the Grand Assembly Hall, Tribune Valerius, a man whose family had helped write Concordiate law for 3 centuries, watched the feed with an expression of pure intellectual terror. He did not see a rogue commander. He saw a living precedent, and it was threatening to overwrite everything. Fleet Admiral Yorick, however, saw something far simpler. He saw an enemy. All Fleet's Alpha configuration. He barked, his voice cutting through the chaos of the central command center. "Shield the planet. I want a full weapons lock on that thing." Scramble the third and fifth carrier groups. I will not have this institution threatened by one woman and a ghost story. Admiral, her broadcast claims, peaceful intent, a nervous subaltern countered. She is petitioning the Assembly. She arrived unannounced in a warship of unimaginable power and is dictating terms, Jorik roared. That is the definition of a threat. Lock on. A question hung in the heart of power. On the bridge of the anchorage, Eva watched the flurry of activity. The displays around her showed the Concordiate fleet moving to encircle her, a swarm of silver fish surrounding a monolithic whale. Their targeting lasers painted her hull invisible but potent indicators of their intent. The proctor stood beside her throne, its featureless face betraying no emotion. Their fleet is preparing to fire Steward. Their capital ships are moving into optimal firing positions. I can neutralize their defense grid and weapon systems in 0.3 seconds. No, Eva said, her voice calm. We will not answer a threat with a threat. That is the old way. That is the Gilded Hand's way. She looked at the image of the assembly hall, at the faces of the tribunes, a mix of fear, anger, and calculation. They are afraid of what they don't understand. We must make them understand. She activated her comms again, her voice cutting through the military chatter with chilling clarity. Admiral Jorik, I see your fleets. I recognize your authority to defend your capital. I am not here to fight. I am here to talk. Firing on a petitioner is a violation of the Concordiate's own charter. Article 1, Section 1. Do you wish to be the man who breaks the first law of our society? A law ignored is a law erased. In a high-rise apartment overlooking the orbital docks, a young boy pressed his face against the reinforced glass. Mom, look! It's the ghost ship from the stories. His mother pulled him back, her heart pounding. The stories were meant to be warnings, myths of a bygone era of terrible power. To see one hanging in their sky, so silent and absolute, felt like the final page of a history book, turning over to reveal a blank waiting page. She had heard the commander's broadcast. It hadn't sounded like a threat. It had sounded tired but certain, like a judge reading a verdict that would change the world, whether the world wanted it or not. The standoff lasted for 3 days. The anchorage remained motionless, absorbing targeting locks and hails with equal silence. It did not power weapons. It did not raise shields. It simply waited, a monument to patience. Down on the planet, the assembly was in turmoil. Legal scholars and military strategists debated endlessly. Eva Rostova had become the single obsession of 1 trillion people. Some called her a traitor, a would-be tyrant. Others called her a savior, the dawn of a new age. The truth, as always, was more complex. She was simply a woman who had answered a question correctly. Aris Thorn had been shuttled down to the surface, acting as Eva's unwilling but loyal emissary. He stood now in a sterile briefing room, facing Admiral Jorik and a panel of stern-faced officers. She is not your enemy, Aris insisted, his voice raw with frustration. She has followed every law. She has committed no act of aggression. She is waiting for the assembly to honor its own rules and hear her petition. Her very presence is an act of aggression. Thorn Jorik slammed his fist on the table. She holds a weapon to our heads and calls it a conversation. We should have fired the moment she arrived. And what would have happened then? Admiral Aris shot back. You saw what it did to the Gilded Hand. It didn't fire a shot. It turned their own aggression into a constructive act. What would it do to us? Turn our plasma cannons into city lights, our torpedoes into infrastructure. You cannot win a war against a weapon that doesn't fight. The nature of a thing is in its use. That was the crux of the problem. The Concordiate knew how to fight wars. They did not know how to handle an entity that simply refused to play by those rules. On the 4th day, Tribune Valerius, after long and fraught negotiations, secured a concession. Eva would be allowed to address the full assembly. Not in person, the security risk was deemed too high, but via a full immersive holographic projection. It was a compromise, a small step back from the brink. Eva stood on the bridge of the anchorage, but her image, a perfect life-sized simulacrum, materialized in the center of the assembly hall. The silence was absolute. Hundreds of tribunes, the most powerful people in the Concordiat, stared at the woman who had single-handedly upended their reality. "I am Commander Eva Rostova." She began, her voice steady and clear. "I am the provisional steward of the Obsidian Anchorage. I am not your enemy. I am a citizen of the Concordiat, and I am here to propose an amendment to its laws." She laid out her case with methodical precision. She explained the anchorage's true nature, not a warship, but a tool of jurisprudence, a teacher, a ledger. She described its encounter with the Gilded Hand not as a victory, but as a legal proceeding. She spoke of its core function, to balance accounts, to counter falsehoods, with truth, to enforce the law not through overwhelming force, but through overwhelming clarity. A debt is a form of truth. The galaxy is full of imbalances, she continued, her holographic eyes seeming to meet those of every person in the room. Pirates, slavers, corrupt corporations, and fallen states operate in the dark in the spaces between the Concordiat's laws. Our fleets are slow. Our courts are slower. We react to tragedies. The anchorage offers a new way, a proactive way, a way to audit the darkness, to bring the ledger into balance before the debt becomes too great to pay. She proposed the creation of the Office of the Steward, an independent, fully transparent branch of the Concordiat bound by its laws, but free from its political inertia. The steward would wield the anchorage not to wage war, but to conduct legal audits, to investigate, to expose, to reveal. Its only weapon would be the truth. Tribune Valerius stood. "Commander, what you propose is a fundamental shift in the balance of power. You ask us to trust one individual with an instrument that can pacify fleets and fold spacetime. How can we be sure such power will not be abused?" "You will not be trusting a person," Eva replied. "You will be trusting the law. The steward will be bound by a charter we will write together. Every action taken by the anchorage will be recorded in a public ledger. Every judgment will be open to review. The anchorage teaches by numbers. It remembers by ledgers. It has no capacity for collars or chains. Its power is not the power to command, but the power to reveal. And the truth, Tribune, cannot be abused. It can only be known." Her speech was met with a storm of debate. The traditionalists, led by Jorek, saw it as a dangerous fantasy. The progressives, led by Valerius, saw it as a necessary evolution. The stalemate had moved from the military to the political. The anchorage still waited. Power given is a test. The universe, however, did not wait for politics. A crisis erupted in the Onyx Expanse, a lawless region on the Concordiat's frontier. A consortium of slaver clans, emboldened by the Concordiat's preoccupation with the anchorage, had launched a coordinated assault. They had overrun 3 independent colonies, taking tens of thousands of captives. A distress call reached Cygnus X1, a desperate plea for help. Admiral Jorek was grim. "The nearest fleet is 2 weeks away at best. We can do nothing for them in time." The assembly was silent. Their political debates, their legal maneuvering suddenly seemed small and meaningless in the face of real immediate suffering. All eyes turned to the hologram of Eva Rostova. She had been monitoring the situation. The data streamed around her on the anchorage's bridge, a tapestry of horror. Life signs being extinguished. Ships full of people being herded like cattle. A massive debt being entered into the cosmic ledger. "This is the darkness." I spoke of Eva's voice, filled the hall, cold and sharp. "This is the imbalance. While we debate procedure, lives are being destroyed. The Concordiate cannot act, but the anchorage can. "This is blackmail," Commander Yorick shouted. "You are using this crisis to force our hand." "No, Admiral," Eva said, her voice softening with a note of sorrow. "I am using this crisis to save lives. That is the first purpose of the law. To protect the innocent." She looked to Valerius. "Tribune, the debate can wait. The people of the Onyx Expanse cannot. I am informing this assembly that I am taking action. You can judge me for it later." The hologram vanished. On the bridge, Ava took her seat. The time for talking was over. The time for demonstration had come. "Proctor," she said, her voice now steel. "The Onyx Expanse, the Slaver Consortium. We are opening their books. All of them." A mirror cares not for the image it reflects. The anchorage did not move. It did not fire a weapon. It simply reached. Its impossibly advanced sensors, capable of reading data across light years, focused on the expanse. It was not a scan. It was an audit. It sifted through encrypted communications, back-alley financial transactions, and Shell Corporation records. It cross-referenced shipping manifests with fuel consumption logs. It mapped the entire criminal enterprise, from the pirates on the front lines to their corrupt benefactors within the Concordiate itself. The process took 12 minutes. Then Eva acted. With the Proctor's flawless execution, the anchorage began to move pieces on a galactic chessboard. It didn't attack the slaver ships. Instead, it sent a single encrypted data packet to the banking clan on Neo-Carthage that laundered their money. The packet contained proof that the slavers were secretly planning to default on their loans and eliminate the bankers. Panic erupted. The slavers' lines of credit were frozen instantly. Simultaneously, it leaked the location of the slavers' primary fuel depot, a secret asteroid base, to a rival pirate faction, framing it as a betrayal. A vicious pirate war erupted far from the colonies. Then it targeted the corrupt officials. Anonymous, untraceable messages were sent to their political rivals, complete with evidence of their complicity in the slave trade. Careers ended. Arrests were made. The political protection for the slavers evaporated. Finally, it addressed the fleet itself. It didn't disable their ships. It simply cracked their private comms network and broadcast a single simple message to every slaver captain: the location of the consortium's hidden treasury, and proof that the clan leaders were planning to take it all for themselves and abandon their crews. The consortium did not fall to an outside force. It devoured itself. Chaos reigned. Slaver ships turned on each other, racing to get their share of the treasure before it was gone. The entire brutal organization collapsed from the inside out, a victim of its own greed and paranoia. The attack on the colonies halted. The captive ships were abandoned as their captors turned on one another. The Concordiate fleet, still more than a week away, received new orders: change course for the Onyx Expanse and begin a rescue and cleanup operation. The truth does not break chains. It reveals they were never locked. Back in the assembly hall, the tribunes watched the events unfold on their tactical displays in stunned silence. They had witnessed a war that wasn't a war, a victory achieved without a single shot fired. Ava Rostova had not destroyed the enemy. She had simply shown the enemy to itself. It was an act of justice so precise, so elegant, it was terrifying. Admiral Yorick was pale, his fury replaced by a dawning, horrified respect. He had been trying to bring a gun to a battle of pure mathematics. He had lost before he had even begun. Tribune Valerius stood once more, his voice resonating in the silent chamber. "We have spent days debating the theoretical power of this entity. We have spoken of fear and precedent and the balance of power. Today, we have seen its practical application. We have seen a victory for law, for justice, and for the people of this Concordiate. We were worried about the sword. We failed to see the scales. He looked up as if addressing Eva herself. The debate is over. Let us write the law. The vote was nearly unanimous. The precedent lock was set. The charter for the office of the steward was drafted and ratified in a single day. It established the steward as an independent auditor with the power to investigate any threat to the Concordiat, but with strict prohibitions against direct military action or infringement on civil liberties. Every action was to be logged, every piece of evidence preserved. The anchorage was not a weapon of war. It was now officially an instrument of truth. Eva felt the shift through the ship. The Concordiat's hostile targeting lasers vanished. The fleets pulled back. The hails were no longer threatening, but respectful. She had won. But she felt a profound sense of loss. She had stepped onto a path from which there was no return. Her old life as a Concordiat officer was over. She was something new, something other. A choice made is a universe discarded. She looked at an image on a small private screen near her throne. It was a picture of her crew on the stellograph. Aris, Lena, the whole team smiling at a celebration. A family. Aris was a captain, now a rising star. Lena was teaching at the academy. They had moved on. She was here on this ancient bridge with only a silent metal proctor for company. The cost of her victory was a quiet, gnawing loneliness. The weight of her choice was a crown of isolation. The proctor seemed to sense her mood. The charter has been ratified, steward. It has been accepted into the anchorage's core programming. The legal paradox is resolved. Is it? Proctor Eva murmured, looking out at the starfield on the dome. Or have we just created a new one? That is irrelevant. The proctor stated, its voice a calm sea of logic. The ledger is balanced. The precedent is set. The work can begin. It gestured to the dome and the star map shifted. Red icons flared up in a dozen sectors, the hidden gilded hand cells, the corporate raiders, the remnants of the Onyx slavers. The galaxy was full of accounts in arrears. Eva straightened her back, pushing her personal grief aside. The choice was made. The cost was paid. All that was left was the duty. She was the steward. This was her watch. The anchorage was not a ship. It was a promise. And she intended to keep it. The law is not a weapon, it is a light. And in the darkness between the stars, it is a scalpel used to excise the sickness of injustice, one precise, undeniable cut at a time. The anchorage did not bring the fire of conquest. It brought the cold, clean light of revelation, and for the corrupt and the cruel, that was a far more terrifying thing. The work was vast. The accounts endless, but for the first time in centuries, the ledger was open. On the main console, a new entry blinked its script, formal and ancient. The title read, Concordiat Charter Amendment 742, the Office of the Steward. The debt will be paid. The books will be balanced.